Hey everybody, Shoebox Legends here. Thanks for joining me for a very special Father's Day episode today on the channel. So just want to take a moment before we get started to say Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Whether you have kids of your own and are a father, or have your own father around still to speak with and spend some time with, or even if you don't and you just spend some time today remembering some of the memories that you do have, I hope you all take a minute to appreciate it today, and just wanted to say Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there and all of the sons out there as well. And what you see in front of you is actually a gift that I received from my dad earlier this year. So my dad has been a huge influence in my life. He is the person that got me into the hobby 30 plus years ago, and he remains supportive of my hobby pursuits to this day. He frequently checks out the channel. I'm pretty sure he watches every video. He even watches some of yours as well. I know he's a big fan of Peeps over at Peeps Wax Packs and some others of you. So he's sort of a silently participating member of this community. And it means so much to me that, you know, over 3 decades later, I can still share in this hobby with him in much the same way that I did as a kid. I think that's just fantastic. So we were a hockey family growing up. Me and my 2 brothers played youth hockey. Huge Hartford Whalers fans, which I'd mentioned before, and would go to a game or 2 every year in downtown Hartford. We'd watch every game we could on TV and followed them obsessively. Members of the Junior Whalers Club, my brothers and I, and so we were a Whalers household. And in the 1991, the year 1991, the Whalers infamously dealt fan favorite, team captain, and the best Whaler ever to play for the franchise, Ron Francis, along with a couple other players, to the Pittsburgh Penguins. This was a devastating trade to members of the Whalers fan base and to my family, who are all included in that fan base. I remember us just being shocked and appalled that the organization could deal away Ron Francis. I mean, he is one of the greatest players in the history of hockey. He was the heartbeat of the team, and I think it was sort of the beginning of the end for the franchise. You know, not more than 5 or 6 years later, they were packing up and moving out of town for Carolina. So this was sort of the beginning of the end, and it's viewed in retrospect as one of the worst trades in the history of hockey, and just a butch job by the Whalers management. So my dad sent me this letter recently that you see here, and I'm going to open it up here and kind of read some of this. It just explains sort of what it is that we're looking at. So this gift is a custom gift related to that Francis trade. So it says, in watching your card collection videos, I came up with the idea of creating a small subset collection to give you. What came to mind was a set involving the infamous Ron Francis Whalers Penguins trade back in 1991. I distinctly recall our family's reaction to that trade, much like that of the rest of the Whalers fans back in the day. I know there were 6 players in the trade, and I could create a set of 12. I was thinking I'd include a card for each of the 6 players on both of the teams that they were a part of. With a total of 12 cards, I searched for a display case that might be able to house the set. I found something called Topps 1988 Gallery of Champions, which consisted of a display box with 12 aluminum cards displayed inside. I had to do some research to determine the size of the cards in the display, but thought I found evidence that they were standard card size, plus they were billed as replicas. I'd simply remove the aluminum cards and replace them with the trade set. So I started building the display. So what he's referring to here, my dad took the time to go out and cruise around on the internet and eBay and find versions of cards of all of the players that were involved in the trade. And where possible, he found a card of them on the team that they were on prior to the trade, and then the team that they were on after the trade. So we had Ron Francis, who went from the Whalers to the Penguins. Ulf Samuelsson went with him from the Whalers to the Penguins. And Grant Jennings was the 3rd piece of that trade, leaving Hartford, joining the Penguins. And then coming back in the other direction, we had John Cullen from the Penguins to the Whalers. Zarley Zalapsky, rest in peace, one of the best names in hockey history, coming from the Penguins to the Whalers. And then lastly, the obscure Jeff Parker, who has so few cards out there that the only major release cards actually feature him with the Sabres, who were in no way related to this trade. But an amazing job by my dad to go out and locate 12 cards on his own featuring all of the players involved in the trade. He then picked up this Gallery of Champions box, as he said, with the thought of laying them all out in there to make a display for me. So we'll continue here. No longer being an expert on any sports cards, I randomly picked out a card from for each player on each team. I ordered the cards from the year of the trade and ordered the 1988 Champion display set. As cards began to arrive, I realized about half of them were signed, an option I just randomly chose. So I decided to make the entire subset consist of signed images and went about ordering more cards. When I had received about 75% of the cards I ordered, I got the 1988 Topps Champions display set. Of course, the aluminum cards inside were miniature and my whole idea for a display was blown out of the water. So while awaiting the last of the cards to arrive, I set about trying to find another appropriate display to contain them. I couldn't find anything that really fit the task, so I decided to scan the cards and make my own display, something that I could print and frame. Hence the Ron Francis Trade framed collection I ended up creating. I figured you could display the collection that way and retain the actual cards I had scanned as part of the set. As for the 1988 Topps Gallery and the non-signed cards, those will be relinquished to you as fodder for trade or whatever you choose. Since the 1988 Topps Gallery of Champions set had an official certificate for display, I had to create my own certificate to accompany the framed set. In the end, I think it all worked out well. I know you'll recall the infamous trade and it will bring back memories of the glory days of the Hartford Whalers and family times. Dad. Just the level of effort that was put in here, the amount of time that was spent searching these out. So what he was talking about is that, he ordered all these cards, he got this display case, and it turned out, disappointingly, that these cards are mini. It looks like we got a random Bruins ticket thrown in here. We're mini in stature. And so his idea to just put the Whalers and Penguins cards in here was obviously not going to work. So I inherited this anyway. So if there's anyone out there who's interested in this aluminum Topps Gallery of Champions collection from 1988, hit me up and maybe I can repurpose this and give it a good home. And if not, I'll probably just hang on to it actually for sentimental reasons, because and maybe I'll just do that anyway actually, because I really like how it ties into the letter and the story here. So now for the big reveal. Given that those cards couldn't fit into the Gallery of Champions case, as he noted, he ended up scanning them in and creating a framed print for me instead. And here it is. I'm really kind of just sort of speechless, as I was when I first, encountered this. I'm going to adjust the picture a little bit here, see if we can get some more of this into frame. But yeah, there it is. So great job. It just looks amazing. My dad knocked it out of the park here. So you've got, again, as I mentioned, the three players here. Ron Francis, who went from the Whalers to the Penguins. And there's the scans of his autographed cards. Ulf Samuelsson, who went from the Whalers to the Penguins. And Grant Jennings, who also went from the Whalers to the Penguins. And then coming in the other direction, John Cullen, Penguins to Whalers. Zarley Zalapsky, Penguins to Whalers, and then obviously Jeff Parker again, just had very obscure cards. I don't think there's an officially licensed trading card that shows him with either the Penguins or the Whalers, so I'm just amazed my dad even found those. And then really love the layout here. So he labeled this along the top with the Ron Francis Trade, March 4th, 1991, laid out all the cards. Then in the bottom here, designed a nice little layout with Ron Cullen jersey featured with the Whalers. He was the biggest piece that Hartford got back in return. And then the Ron Francis Penguins jersey, which makes me cry a little bit. And then in the center here, he typed up a custom article to kind of cover the trade from my perspective. So I'll see if I can hold this straight here, but essentially, the Ron Francis Trade, a day that will live in infamy. And let's actually put this down, and I'll just move the camera in a little bit closer here and talk about this last part. So, the Ron Francis Trade, a day that will live in infamy. On March 4th, 1991, Hartford Whalers' Ron Francis was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins, along with Ulf Samuelsson and Grant Jennings, in exchange for John Cullen, Zarley Zalapsky, and Jeff Parker. Francis was one of the most popular players on the team and held nearly every significant offensive record in the franchise's history, both in the WHA and NHL. The trade was savagely condemned by Whalers fans, few of whom believed the Hockey News' assessment that the Whalers had actually come out on the better end of the trade. And of course, that was proven to definitely not be the case in the years following. Parker would only play 4 games in Hartford before suffering a concussion and a knee injury within 2 weeks of each other, effectively ending his NHL career. The Francis trade was made all of the more painful when Francis and Samuelsson promptly helped lead the Penguins to 2 consecutive Stanley Cup titles. Coincidentally, Eddie Johnston, the Hartford general manager, who had orchestrated the Francis trade, would follow him to Pittsburgh as the Penguins head coach 2 years later. The trade that Johnston made, particularly the Ron Francis trade, proved to be disastrous for the Whalers since the players acquired did not meet the team's expectations, leaving the Whalers depleted of talent and basically costing them substantial goodwill in Hartford. 8-year-old junior Whaler Shane Diaz and his entire family were aghast at the news. The Hartford trio was like part of the family, appearing almost nightly on the family TV screen and in person at games. It would take years to heal the emotional scars. So really fun, creative write-up there from my dad. And I'm astounded that he took the time to create something this memorable and this special with ties to my childhood and a sporting event that is so significant to me in sports history. And yeah, I don't really know what else I can say. I'm speechless, and this is just an example of the kind of guy that my dad is, and couldn't be happier to call him my dad. And as I said, I'm really proud that he's still with us and still able to share my collecting venture with me to this day. So thanks so much, Dad. I really appreciate this. This is definitely the coolest custom framed piece of sports memorabilia that anyone has ever made for me, and it means the world to me. It's priceless, and you're the best. And to everybody else, as I said, hope you enjoy your Father's Day and get to spend a few minutes with your dads or in remembrance of them. And I will be back soon with some more sports card content. Happy Father's Day, everybody.